Welcome to topic 5 of lesson 3. In this final block, we'll cover the basics for creating your own quantitative survey. The first decision to make when designing a data collection tool, such as a survey, is exactly what it is that you need to find out. You need to ensure that the survey questions you ask will allow you to address your evaluation questions. You don't want to miss out on crucial questions and then realize later, and you don't want to waste your respondents' time asking questions that are of little value. Look back at your logic model. What is it that you need to know? What personal information do you need? For example, age, sex, or ethnicity? Do you need permission to access their clinical records? Or do you need to know their opinions on your service? If you want to know about health behaviors, what details do you need? For example, do you need to know if they're smokers, yes or no? Or do you need to know how many cigarettes they smoke a day? Do you need to know if they've tried to quit, and why? Also think about what information you can extrapolate from the data without needing to ask for it directly. For example, if you want to know how long someone has smoked for, you can work this out from their age and the age that they started. However, you would still need to ask if they were a current smoker. You couldn't assume that they still smoke because they're giving you starting age. It's well worth your time looking for existing questionnaires at this point rather than making your own. Many validated scales already exist online relating to patient satisfaction, well-being, quality of life, and many medical and psychological illnesses. Links to some sites you may find useful for this are shown here. Making sure that you use a valid scale will improve the accuracy of your results, as we discussed in topic 2, and make sure that you don't miss important information. Looking up existing tools will also allow you to draw direct comparisons between your results and those of other research, and may at the very least give you ideas about how to approach the design of your own questions. If there are no previously available questionnaires, then you'll need to design your own. There are some general rules for assembling your questions which will make your questionnaire more useful to you. Try to keep your questions closed-ended with fixed lists of responses, so that the answers are directly related to the questions that you want to ask, and make sure that your wording is clear and can't be misinterpreted or misunderstood. Because of this, it's good to avoid insinuations or idioms. Be direct and factual. Avoid questions that are leading. Don't assume that your questions will always be relevant to your participants. For example, consider asking, "Have you experienced this side effect?" rather than leading with, "How much has this side effect affected you?" Don't ask, "Do you agree?" but instead try, "Please identify whether you agree or disagree." You should also avoid double-barreled questions. Ask about one item that you want to measure per question. Don't ask if your clinic is comfortable and welcoming, or do you forget or decide not to take your medication. Ask one question and then the other. Is your clinic comfortable and is your clinic welcoming? An easy way to avoid these mistakes is not to use adjectives, jargon, or the word "and" in your questions. Instead of yes-no questions, think about the use of scales. For example, instead of "Are you happy with your care, yes or no?" consider using "How happy are you with your care?" with the options to say very happy, happy, indifferent, unhappy, or very unhappy. This will give you a much clearer response without leaving it open to the participant to choose their own wording. Also think about whether the question itself covers too much. "Are you happy with your care?" may seem simple, but what part of the care are they thinking of? The staff, the waiting times, the diagnosis? When you have your questions together, you'll need to think about the design of your survey as a whole. Order your questions carefully. Generally, it's better to put your most important questions first, as these are the ones most likely to be answered. Having said that it's important to have direct, closed questions, you may want to think about giving your participants the option to give their own thoughts at the end of the survey. This can be done easily with a question such as, "Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?" This will give your participants the opportunity to bring up any concerns about the survey and add any details that you may have missed that they consider important to their care. Finally, a golden rule for surveys is to keep them short. This goes for the survey itself, because long surveys are far less likely to be picked up or completed, but also the questions. Long questions are likely to be skipped or skim-read, which leads to less accurate answers. Once you have the questions worked out, you need to think about the layout of your survey. This is more straightforward. Start with some introductory text, thanking your participants for their time and explaining the importance of your evaluation to their care. You can include any information here that's necessary for them to be able to answer the survey effectively. Keep it brief and include contact information in case they have any questions. Stress that their taking part is voluntary and will not affect their care. You also want to make your survey accessible. Think about the colors you use. Make sure there's enough contrast that the text and any logos are easy to read. Also thinking about the font type and size. Generally, text should not be smaller than size 12 and should have no serifs, for example Arial rather than Times New Roman. An example survey is available at the bottom of this lesson page in case this would be useful. Finally, think about how you're intending to give out your survey. If you're looking to gain information from people who come to a specific clinic, then it may be easiest to give it out when they come in. In this case, you need to think about the time period you need to cover, ideally long enough that everyone who uses the clinic has a chance to be involved. For example, if the average checkup length is 6 months, then this would be the optimum amount of time in which to run your evaluation. You also need to make sure that they know where to give the survey back to, and that your survey is short enough that they can fill it in easily while waiting for an appointment. If appointment times are too short, you may consider allowing participants to take the survey home or even posting it to them. Provide a stamped envelope for them to return the survey in, but be aware that your response rates will be lower as people will forget to fill it in or post it back. The same may be true if you intend to give out the survey online. One way to increase responses is to send reminders or provide incentives such as cash or a prize draw. The more direct the incentive is, the more responses you'll get, but also the more you'll bias your responders towards what they think you want them to write. Your wording may also impact who wants to take part. If you sell your survey as a way to improve your service, then you're most likely to hear from people who are unhappy with the way the service already is. In other words, you'll end up with an information bias. Only very strong opinions will come through. Once you have your survey, it's highly worth plotting time into your Gantt chart to pilot the survey. This means giving it to a small number of potential participants to make sure that they understand it and it's in an acceptable format. Would they prefer it to be given online or in person? Do they need help understanding it? Was it too long and they got bored? Piloting your survey is really important to ensure that your survey questions and the survey as a whole operate well and give you the results that you need. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening.